Welcome back, War Room fans. Well, here it is. Our last look at Japan for a while, since I think it's time we start talking about some of these other nations in here. The main reason why I started out with Japan, guys, is primarily because I do think they're the one nation, Germany is the other one, that has like a lot of possibilities, a lot of different things they can do. I think once we start exploring like Russia, obviously China, but even the United States to a certain extent, they're kind of limited on at the beginning of the game on their tactical possibilities or strategic possibilities. I mean, I've been thinking about those nations a lot. And I do think they have some interesting things, but Japan definitely, I think, is a nation that has a lot of different possibilities, different tactics, different things you can do with them, which makes them very intriguing and quite frankly, very fun to play because you can do a lot of different things with them. So this is kind of my summary of all the videos I did on it. So let's just kind of run through them, kind of quick fire style. So the first attack plan obviously was the Calcutta Crush, bringing everything up here into India, making India like the focus point of Japan, where you just kind of crush it right in on the first two turns, all out of Southeast Asia. Do everything you can to basically knock out India ASAP, okay? The second one we talked about was the J4, the slow burn, as I called it, where we're trying to do a dual attack here into Australia and in India. Really keep the pressure up on Britain, okay? I really think, guys, even though I've laid out the American attack and the Russian attack, which we'll briefly talk about here again, I really think putting the pressure on Great Britain and taking these territories, stressing them to the point where the United States basically has to take over the defense of Britain. Because if you can take all these southern territories down here and take out India and start pressuring them, the Great Britain's going to be up in like supply lines disrupted, economic collapse if you keep the pressure on them. So you can basically knock out the United Kingdom out of the war for Germany. And so Germany doesn't even really have to worry about Great Britain. I really think that should be the main focus point of Japan, okay? Obviously we have, attack plan 3, which was the Russian invasion, which you saw in game 4. We successfully pulled it off. I mean, Japan was all the way up in here. We just lost focus over here, and America just beelined it in and took us out. And that's because we lost focus. We were getting concerned about China because China was was romping on us. And so we lost focus in that game. We're panning over here to America. I just laid out that attack plan. I think that's a viable attack plan, okay? But I think it's also viable in the sense that some of these plans we can start merging into like one. Like, let's say we go after America, but we kind of focus on the south end here. And we go ahead and take New Zealand for 2 stress. We try to take out Australia. There's a lot of stress points down here for Great Britain. So you can kind of tag team it a little bit. Go after UK, go after America. It's kind of the same thing up here. You can do the Russian thing, but also maybe threaten Alaska at the same time, okay? Start combining some of these plans, like the India crush, but also incorporate, let's come in here into China. And let's really make this a focal point of our attack plan, okay? You could even roll in, let's say you do the Australian attack, but you come in here at P17, then you can start rolling it up in here into India on later turns if you're successful, okay? So we have to start, thinking about combining some of these plans not making them like singular in nature, where this is all I do, and really expand out Japan's horizons, okay, on how they're going to help out Germany here. So obviously, I just said the UK is a big thing. If you can come up here and pull off this Russian thing, it will it will definitely help out Germany. If you can get up in here and you're staving it off down here, you're making inroads over here, where this whole area is secure, this will definitely help. Same thing with over here in America. If you can be successful in getting up in Alaska and really messing with them, you're going to really mess up the United States' timing when it comes to going after Germany. Because they're going to have to start building stuff. They're actually going to have to start paying attention to you. So all these plans are viable. And I just think you have to decide each specific game. What's the most important plan, or what's the most viable plan that you can pull off? And then as you guys start playing more and more games, have Japan switch it up every once in a while. If there's one guy who's constantly playing Japan, maybe, every time he's like, well, I always do this plan. Well, maybe switch it up. Do the Russian thing. Do the Alaskan US thing. Okay? Now, some of these, I never really covered some of the smaller stuff about Japan that is interesting on the Pacific map. And it's specifically when we get down in here, like these convoys. Notice how all the bubbles intersect. So if the Allies get into P0, it's just like these ones over here, okay? Meaning if, you get up in here and you roll a yellow, you kill 3 OSRs. Same thing, you roll blue, you kill 3 iron. Down here, notice off the coast of Southeast Asia, another cluster. 3 OSRs, 1 oil. 2 oil on this cluster, okay? These are going to be targets for the Allies, especially at the beginning of the game, because remember, down here in Northern Territory, they have 2 planes. They can fly out here to P16 and take 2 free shot at taking some of your oil. And taking 2 oil on the first turn is not pleasant for Japan. So you need to be aware of these convoy routes, especially down here, because if you're not handling Australia, if you're kind of letting them linger in the game because you're focused in other spots, they can start taking free shots at a lot of your oil down here. Okay, losing 3 OSR stinks, but it's not that big of a deal. Losing 3 oil though, that's a big deal. So you need to keep your eyes on these unique convoy routes that really only are on the Pacific map. Okay, so you need to watch that. Another idea I had, it's not really an attack plan because it's way too late in the game, but let's say you do take India. And let's say you have, 8 guys up here. Well, you can bounce off of India. You can bounce all the way down here to I3 and land in here in 2 turns. Now, when you land in here, the whole point is you take that, you take 1, 2, 3, 4, you take 5 territories from them if Britain can't react. They take 5 more stress if you do that. You're not going down there to necessarily hold them. Just take them from Britain, okay? If they take them back from you, it's not a big deal. But for Britain, it is a huge deal. Because remember, once you take stress, you can't undo the stress by taking the territory back. The only way you can do that is through your collection of 5 metals or consumer goods. So taking territories, like down here in Australia, even if you took all of Australia, you might even consider not defending it. Just, see if America tries to come back and liberate it. But just don't keep guys permanently stationed down there unless America is really coming at you and you want to fight them down there. Just keep moving those guys, move them off the islands. That's the other thing, guys. Remember all these little islands we talked about and all these attack strategies. There's guys all over this map. Okay? On turn 4, don't look at the map and go, man, I got all these guys still sitting on these islands doing nothing. Because that's part of your initial attack strength. That's the one weakness of Japan, as we discussed. They're very diffused. All their land command stacks are all over the board. But if you take like one turn and dedicate like 5 or 4 command actions, you can start forming up some really large land stacks with those little guys coming off the island. So don't forget about them. You know, incorporate them into your attack plans. Because if you don't incorporate in the attack plan, then basically what you're doing then is well, every turn I drop 2 guys here, 2 land units here, and then up here I drop some land units, some naval, maybe some fighters. So you become very one-dimensional at the beginning of the game. You really need to try to incorporate all of your guys. Now I realize that takes commands and you know it slows you up. But I think in the later turns like turn 3, 4, and 5, it'll serve you well if you can get like another complete 8 stack formed up that was already on the map and moving wherever you're going. Doesn't matter which attack plan, but at least you can form up an 8 stack of guys that were free because those were your initial units. So don't forget about them, guys. Okay, so I think this is really it for Japan. I think we've pretty much well covered everything. You know, I didn't talk about builds really in any of these strategies because I really think the building, because remember, whatever you build in the first turn doesn't arrive till turn 3. What you build on turn 2 arrives in turn 4. So a lot of the build strategies, you know, those strategies are, depending on what you're doing, they're really game dependent, and you just have to make a good choice on what you think you need to be building. I don't think there's a set on your opening turn, you build this, on your second turn, you build this. It's the only thing I can say is every turn you always build 2 land units up here, every turn. I think you should build an infantry and an artillery or an infantry and a tank every turn in here, okay? You always want to build infantry up here because your primary forces down here are comprised of infantry and you don't want to lose them, okay? Because you're going to have some tanks down here, so you're always going to be getting force advantage on China. So you don't have to really be focused on building tanks with Japan. You just need to build a couple tanks so that you can get all force advantage on everybody, or at least have it so that it's a straight up fight. But don't focus on tanks. Use your oil for your planes and your ships and focus primarily on artillery and infantry. So that's what I'm going to say about construction. But once again, guys, that's going to be completely up to you and depending on which attack plan you're doing. So this is how we're going to end Japan for now. And I'm not really sure who we're going to do next. So if you really want me to do a nation, go ahead and leave some comments. And maybe I'll do that nation next. But I haven't quite decided who to do next. I'm leaning towards maybe doing an allied country like the UK or the United States next. But I will leave some of that up to you guys. So leave your comments below, and I'll talk to you guys later. Bye.